They forced her to stand before the entire pack while judgment pressed down on her from every direction. Not spoken aloud. Not openly challenged. Judgment carried in narrowed eyes and curled lips. They said she was being punished. They said her family must have offended the elders. They said no woman of worth was bound like this unless the pack wanted her broken. Her name was Seraphina. She stood straight anyway. She had been raised to endure. Raised to obey the moon, the pack, and the laws that never bent for women like her. She had waited years for the moon to recognize her mate. But the moon had never answered. So the elders had chosen for her. Across the stone circle stood the male she was to marry. An Omega. His name was Rowan. He was thinner than most wolves, shoulders narrow, posture calm in a way that felt misplaced. His gaze was lowered, not in submission, but in quiet distance, as if he were somewhere else entirely. He did not look afraid. That unsettled her more than mockery ever could. The elder spoke, his voice heavy with ceremony, announcing what everyone already knew. Seraphina of the Black Hollow Pack would be bound that night. To Rowan, rankless Omega. A ripple moved through the crowd. Some pity. Some satisfaction. Some barely hidden cruelty. Seraphina felt heat rise in her chest, but she did not flinch. She refused to give them the satisfaction. When the elder cut their palms and pressed them together, the moment stretched longer than it should have. Blood met blood. The bond snapped into place. Seraphina sucked in a sharp breath. It was not gentle. It was vast. It settled over her like an ancient weight, heavy and cold and watchful, as if something far older than the pack itself had noticed her existence. Around them, wolves shifted uneasily. No one spoke. Rowan lifted his eyes then and looked directly at her. His gaze was steady. Dark. Unreadable. For one brief heartbeat, Seraphina felt as though she were standing before something that wore a wolf's skin only out of patience. Then the feeling vanished, as if it had never been there at all. They were dismissed quickly after. No celebration. No blessings. No welcome howls. Only silence. Their assigned dwelling sat at the edge of pack territory, where the trees grew sparse and the ground turned rocky. A place meant to be temporary. A place meant to remind them of their standing. Seraphina walked ahead, her steps measured, her spine straight. She expected Rowan to trail behind her. He did not. He walked beside her, matching her pace without effort. When they reached the door, she stopped and finally turned to him. "You do not have to pretend," she said quietly. "I know what the pack thinks of you. And of me." Rowan studied her face, as if weighing something unseen. "This is not pretending," he replied. She frowned. "Then what is it?" "Acceptance." The word unsettled her more than anger would have. Inside, the cabin was cold and bare. They did not touch. They sat apart while the moon climbed higher outside, its light slipping through the narrow window like a silent witness. Seraphina waited for him to shift. Omegas always struggled during the full moon. Rowan did not. Instead, his jaw tightened once. His hands clenched, then relaxed, as if he were restraining something that wanted out. "You should sleep," he said eventually. "Tomorrow will not be kind. To me or to you?" she asked. "To them," he answered calmly. Her breath caught. Later, as sleep finally pulled her under, the bond flared without warning. Seraphina jolted awake. Rowan stood near the doorway, his presence filling the room, his eyes faintly illuminated by silver light. "The moon remembers," he said quietly. "And it does not forgive easily." Far beyond the pack lands, something ancient stirred, and the Lycan blood began to wake. The next morning, the pack did not greet them. They avoided Seraphina's gaze. They whispered behind fangs and hands. They watched Rowan as if waiting for him to fail. Every glance felt like a blade. Seraphina ignored them. She refused to let their judgment touch her. Rowan, however, moved differently. Calm. Measured. Every step deliberate. Every breath quiet. Even as they passed the Alpha's cabin, where laughter and mockery spilled like poison, Rowan said nothing. But his restraint was palpable. Seraphina caught it in the way his hands clenched slightly, the way his jaw tightened when a pack member snickered. She realized then that the man everyone called weak was holding back more than anger. He was holding back power. Their days passed in silence, filled only with the chores assigned to them. Fetch water. Prepare meals. Mend the outer fences. Small tasks, each carrying a weight meant to remind them of their place. The pack watched, waiting for the Omega to stumble. Waiting for Seraphina to regret her bond. And yet, he did not falter. One afternoon, as she struggled to lift a heavy bundle of firewood, Rowan appeared at her side without a word. His hands brushed hers, steadying her, but not touching too much. Just enough to remind her that she was not alone. The pack noticed. Whispers spread like wildfire. "Look at him," they murmured. "He dares to touch her. He dares to stand with her." Seraphina looked up at him, startled. "Why do you help me?" she asked. "Because no one else will," he replied simply. That was all. Nothing more. Nothing less. That night, under the silver glow of the full moon, the pack gathered outside the cabin. They came to mock. They came to humiliate. They did not expect Rowan to step forward. He did not shift. He did not roar. He simply stood. Silent. Still. And the air seemed to tremble around him. A low murmur spread through the pack. Some stepped back. Some faltered. Some felt instinctively that this Omega was more than he appeared. Seraphina's heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to demand he shift, to show them all the truth, but he shook his head slightly. A warning. Not yet. And then, a challenge arrived. From the far end of the clearing, a rival alpha approached, sneering. His claws dug into the dirt. His eyes burned with disdain. "You think you belong here?" the alpha spat. "This Omega is weak. He will fall." Rowan's gaze did not waver. "I will not fall," he said quietly. The words were soft, almost calm, but every wolf in the clearing felt the weight behind them. The wind shifted. Leaves rustled unnaturally. Even the alpha faltered, just slightly. The pack sensed it. Something ancient stirring. Something the elders had forgotten. The moonlight caught Rowan's eyes, and for a moment they glimmered silver. A warning. A promise. The alpha stepped back. The pack whispered. Seraphina realized then, fully, that the man everyone called weak was hiding something the moon itself would envy. And if the moon could sense it, so could she. Her pulse raced as Rowan turned to her, his voice low. "Do not speak of this." Not yet. But she could not hide her wonder. Not from him. Not from the truth that was beginning to rise, like fire beneath ash. The night stretched long. And somewhere in the distance, the call of the Lycan blood answered. It was awakening. And nothing would ever be the same. The following days were worse. The pack no longer hid their disdain. They mocked Seraphina at every turn. They laughed at the Omega she was bound to. They threw tasks that were impossible to complete alone. They sabotaged her chores, whispered lies, and spread rumors she could not silence. And still, Rowan moved calmly beside her. He never raised his voice. He never retaliated openly. Yet Seraphina could feel it, power coiled beneath his skin like a spring. One evening, as the wind swept through the clearing, a young beta approached her, sneering. "Why do you bother with him?" the beta hissed. "He's worthless. He will never protect you." Seraphina's hands trembled, not from fear, but from anger. "Perhaps," she said quietly, "but he is mine to stand with. And you will learn that strength comes in ways you cannot see." The beta laughed, turning away. Rowan's eyes followed the wolf as he disappeared into the shadows. When Seraphina turned to thank him, he was already beside her, silent as the night. "You felt it too," she whispered. "Yes," he said, voice soft. "They are blind to it, but the blood remembers." Her heart skipped. The next full moon approached, and the pack's cruelty intensified. They forced Seraphina and Rowan to the center of the clearing, surrounded by dozens of wolves. "Show us your Omega strength," they mocked. "Prove you deserve each other." Rowan did not shift. He did not fight. He merely stood, his gaze sweeping the crowd, steady, unflinching. And then, slowly, impossibly, the air itself seemed to tighten. A low growl echoed from nowhere and everywhere at once. The wolves froze. The alpha who had mocked him days before felt an instinctive fear coil through him. Seraphina's eyes widened. Rowan's restraint was breaking, but not in anger. Not yet. It was as if something within him had stirred, ancient and commanding, something the elders had long forgotten. The moon rose high, bathing them in silver light. Rowan's eyes reflected it, glowing faintly, and for a single heartbeat, the world fell silent. No one moved. No one breathed. And then Rowan spoke. "I will not be mocked. I will not be underestimated. And I will protect what is mine." The words were quiet, but they carried like thunder. The pack stumbled backward. Fear and awe collided in their eyes. Seraphina's chest swelled. She realized with a shock that she had never truly known him. Not until now. He was not weak. He was waiting. The moment passed, and the wolves scattered, murmuring and frightened, unsure what they had just witnessed. Rowan turned to her then, eyes softening. "Rest now," he said. "Tomorrow, the world will test us again." Seraphina nodded, understanding that what she had thought was punishment was only the beginning. And somewhere far beyond the pack, the Lycan blood continued to awaken. Something old. Something powerful. Something that would soon demand Rowan answer and claim what was his. The night stretched long and dark. But for the first time, Seraphina did not feel afraid. Because she knew, finally, that she was not alone. And that the Omega everyone had mocked was far more than he seemed. The days that followed were relentless. The pack had grown bold. Every task Seraphina attempted was sabotaged. Every step Rowan took beside her drew whispered ridicule. Yet through it all, Rowan did not waver. He moved with quiet control, never striking, never showing anger, yet every movement carried weight, a presence the pack could not ignore. One evening, a group of alphas cornered them near the river, their voices dripping with mockery. "Look at him," one said, baring his teeth. "He cannot even protect a woman. What a shame." Rowan did not speak. He did not move. He merely watched, and the air around him seemed to hum with something unspoken, a tension the pack could feel in their bones. Seraphina stepped forward. "Enough," she said. Her voice trembled, but her words cut sharper than any claw. The alphas laughed. "Speak for yourself," one sneered. "Your mate cannot save you." Rowan's eyes glimmered faint silver in the moonlight. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. Then a low, resonant growl rolled from him, quiet but impossible to ignore. The river trembled. The wind stilled. Even the trees seemed to lean closer. The pack stepped back, instinctively. Fear prickled along their spines. Seraphina's heart raced. She had never seen him like this. And then, just as quickly, the glow faded, the growl vanished, and Rowan's expression returned to calm, unreadable. He turned to her, voice soft. "They are testing us," he said. "But they do not know what they provoke." Seraphina felt a shiver run through her. That night, under the full moon, she lay awake and thought about him. About the restraint he carried. About the power he refused to release. And for the first time, she felt something she had never allowed herself before trust. She realized he was protecting her, not just from the pack, but from himself. The next morning, a new threat arrived. A pack from the Northern Territories, larger, fiercer, drawn by the whispers of Rowan's hidden strength. They came to challenge him, to test the Omega the Black Hollow pack had claimed as their own. Rowan stood at the edge of their territory, silent. His eyes scanned the approaching wolves. Seraphina felt her pulse quicken. She wanted to call out, to warn him, to do anything to help. He shook his head slightly. "Do not act," he said silently. "Watch." And so they watched. The northern pack stepped forward, their leader growling a challenge. Rowan did not shift. He did not roar. He waited. And when the first wolf lunged, he moved. Not with anger, not with cruelty, but with precision, with a power that seemed to flow from the moon itself. The attacking wolf skidded to a halt, eyes wide in shock. Rowan did not harm him. He simply stood, his presence undeniable, his control absolute. The northern pack faltered. Seraphina's breath caught. She had never imagined an Omega could command such fear, such respect, without striking a blow. When the rival wolves finally retreated, Rowan turned to her. "Do you see now?" he asked quietly. I see," she whispered. The bond between them throbbed, pulsing with strength, ancient and alive. And somewhere, far beyond the territories of any pack, the Lycan blood stirred. It was waking, and it would soon demand Rowan answer. The pack had grown bold. They no longer whispered behind hands. They mocked openly. They hurled insults at Seraphina, called Rowan weak, useless, unworthy. And still, Rowan remained calm. But calm no longer hid what simmered beneath. One afternoon, the elders summoned them to the clearing. The sun had burned low, painting the trees in shades of fire. The pack formed a circle, fangs bared, claws digging into the earth, their eyes sharp and hungry for weakness. "You have humored us long enough," the Alpha sneered. "It is time to see what your Omega is truly worth." Seraphina's chest tightened. She glanced at Rowan. He stood perfectly still, silent, watching. His eyes seemed to hold centuries of memory, and for the first time, Seraphina saw a flicker, barely perceptible, but undeniable, of something primal waiting to awaken. A young beta stepped forward, thrusting a wooden stake into the ground near Rowan. "Prove yourself," he spat. Rowan's hands clenched. His body tensed. The air around him seemed to grow heavier, denser, as if the clearing itself was bracing for something dangerous. Seraphina felt the bond flare, pulsing through her like fire and ice at once. She gasped, clutching her chest. Then Rowan spoke. "I am not weak." The words were soft, but the ground vibrated with their power. The Alpha laughed nervously. "You will see weakness soon enough," he said, stepping closer. Rowan's eyes glimmered silver. The hair on Seraphina's arms stood on end. She felt a surge of energy in the air, an invisible weight pressing against her. The Alpha faltered. The pack stepped back, instinctively. Rowan moved then, slowly, deliberately. He did not strike, yet every wolf in the circle felt the shift in power, the pulse of something old and untamed moving through him. The wind carried a low growl, impossible to locate. The trees shivered. The earth hummed beneath their feet. Seraphina's voice trembled as she whispered, "Rowan." He looked at her, eyes softening for a heartbeat. "Trust me," he said quietly. And the moment passed. The pack, though shaken, still dared to mock. Still dared to challenge. But Seraphina knew the truth. Rowan was no longer hiding. He was holding back. Later, in the quiet of their cabin, Seraphina turned to him. "Why didn't you?" she began. He placed a hand gently on hers. "They are not ready," he said. "The blood will awaken soon. And when it does, the world will remember what they have forgotten. I will not let them destroy you before that time comes." Her pulse raced. She had never felt so protected, so connected, yet so aware of the danger lurking in the man she called mate. And far beyond the pack, the call of the Lycan blood grew louder. Ancient. Patient. Hungry. It had recognized Rowan. It had chosen him. And soon, it would demand him to answer. The night descended over Black Hollow Pack with an eerie stillness. The trees whispered secrets in the wind, and the moon hung low, glowing silver as if anticipating what was about to unfold. Seraphina could feel it, the weight of the air, heavy and thick, charged with something ancient and undeniable. She had never sensed anything like this before. Rowan stood outside the cabin, his silhouette rigid yet impossibly calm. The pack had dared to gather again, though not openly this time. Every alpha and beta lingered in the shadows, drawn like moths to a flame, yet hesitant to step too close. Something about Rowan demanded respect even from those who would have laughed at him days before. Seraphina approached him, her heartbeat a drumbeat she could feel in her throat. "They're going to push too far tonight," she whispered, her voice trembling yet steady. "I can feel it." Rowan turned to her, his silver-gray eyes glowing faintly beneath the moonlight. "Let them," he said quietly. "They need to understand the difference between mockery and power." But you must stay close. I cannot let them endanger you. The clearing grew colder as the pack slowly emerged from the tree-line, their forms tense, bodies coiled like spring-loaded traps. The Alpha who had challenged Rowan days ago stepped forward first, his lips twisted in a cruel grin. "So the weak Omega dares to stand before us," he said, voice loud enough to carry. "We will see if your words hold any truth." Rowan did not respond immediately. He simply inhaled, deeply, and the air seemed to ripple around him. Seraphina could feel it through the bond, the pulse of something powerful, restrained for centuries, now awakening. Without warning, Rowan moved. Not with aggression, not with malice, but with authority. His voice cut through the night, low, commanding. "Leave her out of this, or you will learn the cost of underestimating me." A ripple of unease passed through the pack. Wolves shifted nervously, claws scraping the dirt. Their Alpha stepped closer, teeth bared. "And what if we refuse?" Rowan's eyes glinted silver. The ground trembled slightly beneath their feet. A low hum vibrated through the clearing, felt in bones and hearts alike. Seraphina gasped. She had never witnessed such control, such raw presence contained in a single being. The Alpha laughed nervously, but it quickly died in his throat. The hair along his neck stood on end as instinct screamed at him. Rowan's restraint was not gone, it was evolving, stretching, threatening to break. The Omega who had seemed fragile was now a force the pack could neither predict nor challenge openly. "Enough." Rowan's voice rang out, deeper now, resonating with the ancient power coursing through him. "If any of you step closer, you will regret it for the rest of your lives. You have mocked me, doubted me, and humiliated her. Tonight, that ends." The clearing fell silent. Even the leaves seemed to freeze in the wind. Seraphina stepped forward, emboldened. "Rowan, they are still many," she said softly. "You cannot." "I will not harm her," he interrupted, eyes fixed on the Alpha. "But I will show them the truth." Then the unthinkable happened. The moonlight intensified, washing the clearing in an unnatural glow. Rowan's body began to shift, not fully, not violently, but in a way that hinted at something beyond Omega or Alpha, something far older. His eyes blazed silver, fangs slightly bared, muscles tensing with contained strength. The air seemed alive, vibrating with energy. The pack faltered. Fear and disbelief warred across their faces. They had never seen an Omega claim the night in this way, nor had they witnessed the calm authority he wielded without a single strike. Rowan moved forward slowly, deliberately. Each step echoed through the clearing like a drumbeat of warning. He was no longer simply defending, he was asserting a dominance that no pack could ignore. Seraphina's heart raced. She realized fully that the man beside her was no ordinary Omega. He had carried this power all along, hidden, restrained, awaiting the exact moment to reveal it. The Alpha leader took a step back, instinctively, claws digging into the dirt. "You cannot be." "I am," Rowan said, his voice steady, filled with authority that transcended rank or title. "I am what the blood demands. And you will remember it." Then the first howl sounded, not from Rowan, not from the pack, but from something older, something ancient stirring beyond the borders of Black Hollow. It was a sound of power, of claim, of awakening. Seraphina felt it pulse through her chest. The bond flared, hot and alive, and for the first time, she felt fully tethered to him, not merely by duty, but by destiny. Rowan turned to her then, and in that glance, she saw centuries of knowledge, unspoken memories, and a promise of protection beyond comprehension. "Stay with me," he said quietly. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. You will not be harmed." They will learn that mocking an Omega who is chosen by the blood itself is fatal. The pack's murmurs turned to whispers, then silence. They backed away slowly, eyes wide, unblinking, hearts pounding as instinct screamed the truth. This Omega was no longer just a mate, no longer just a survivor. He was the Lycan blood incarnate, waiting to claim what was his. Seraphina stepped closer to him, and the moment the bond pulsed between them, the clearing seemed to shift. Trees swayed, the wind changed, and the moonlight wrapped around them like a mantle. Rowan's voice softened for her alone. "The time is coming," he said. "The pack has tested us enough. Soon, they will bow not because I command them, but because they will recognize the truth of who I am." And far beyond the territory of Black Hollow, the forests trembled as if acknowledging the awakening of a power long dormant, a force that had waited centuries for its rightful master. Seraphina knew then that everything had changed. Nothing would ever be the same. And Rowan was no longer merely the Omega she had been forced to marry. He was something far greater, something ancient, something that even the moon recognized as king. The night air was thick with tension. The Black Hollow pack had retreated, yet the memory of Rowan's presence lingered in every corner of the clearing. Wolves whispered in the shadows, hearts pounding, unsure if they had witnessed reality or some ancient illusion. Seraphina stood close to him, feeling the bond pulse with a heat she had never known. The energy radiating from Rowan was no longer subtle. It was alive, palpable, a tide of power pressing against everything nearby. "They will not stop testing us," she said softly. "Even after tonight, they will not accept. They will learn," Rowan interrupted, his voice steady and unwavering. "But only after they understand what they are dealing with. I will show them, but not yet with anger. Not yet with blood. The moment must be perfect, precise." The wind shifted suddenly, rustling the treetops like a warning. Somewhere far beyond the boundaries of the pack, something ancient stirred. A presence older than the mountains, older than the rivers, older than even the moon itself. Rowan's eyes glimmered silver as he lifted his head, sensing it, acknowledging it. Seraphina's chest tightened. "What is it?" she whispered. "The Lycan blood," he said softly. "It recognizes me. It always has. Soon, it will demand more than restraint. Soon, I will have to claim what has waited centuries for me." Before she could respond, a rustling came from the tree line. Figures emerged. Wolves from rival packs, drawn by whispers of Rowan's awakening. They were larger, fiercer, eyes shining with challenge, claws ready to strike. Seraphina's heart raced. "Rowan," she began, but he held up a hand. "Watch," he said. "See how it begins." The leader of the intruders stepped forward, teeth bared, muscles coiled. "We heard an Omega commands power," he snarled. "Show us. Or we take it ourselves." Rowan did not shift. He did not strike. He simply moved with measured steps, deliberate, calm, and the air around him vibrated with energy. Even the trees seemed to lean closer, listening. A low, resonant growl emerged not from Rowan, not from the pack, but from the earth itself, or perhaps from the blood coursing through him. Every wolf froze. Even the intruder's leader faltered, instinct screaming at him that he had underestimated something he could not comprehend. Rowan lifted his gaze to Seraphina. "Stay behind me," he whispered. "Trust me completely." She did, though her pulse threatened to shatter her calm. The bond flared, connecting them, letting her feel everything: the restrained fury, the ancient authority, the command of power that had never belonged to the living before. Then Rowan moved. Slowly, deliberately. His presence alone forced the rival pack to hesitate. Every claw in the dirt, every muscle coiled, every sharp tooth bared in aggression faltered. He radiated authority, dominance, and command so intense that even the alpha felt instinctively that resistance was futile. "Leave," Rowan said, voice calm but carrying like thunder. "Leave now, or witness the consequences of defying what you do not understand." A wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a silver glow. The moonlight intensified, illuminating Rowan in a way that made him look less human, less Omega, more something eternal, unchallengeable, commanding. The rival pack backed away slowly, murmuring, fear overtaking defiance. They retreated, leaving the clearing empty. Seraphina stepped closer. Her hands trembled. "Rowan, that was necessary," he interrupted gently, eyes softening as he looked at her. "They needed to see what they toyed with. But this is only the beginning. The blood will call me soon, and then nothing will stop what must be claimed." The moonlight flared, and the bond between them pulsed violently. Seraphina felt warmth and fire and protection all at once. For the first time, she realized that Rowan's power was not only physical. It was tied to destiny, to lineage, to something far older than any pack, any law, any wolf. Her lips parted as she whispered, I trust you. He smiled faintly, a glimmer of relief passing through the shadowed intensity of his gaze. And that is all I need, he said. Together, nothing will harm us. Not the pack. Not rivals. Not even the blood itself when it awakens fully. The night stretched, calm yet alive, as though holding its breath. Seraphina leaned against him, and she could feel the restrained power thrumming beneath his skin, a rhythm as old as the world. Far beyond the forests, far beyond any territory, the ancient Lycan blood surged, answering to him, recognizing him as king, heir, and master. The moment was coming. The claim was inevitable. And Seraphina knew, with an absolute certainty, that she would witness it. She would stand with him when the world finally bowed to the Omega who was never weak, the man who was destined to be the Lycan King. Nothing would ever be the same again. The night arrived with a weight Seraphina had never felt before. The moon hung low, enormous and silver, bathing the clearing in a light so bright it seemed almost alive. The air itself seemed to thrum with energy, vibrating against her skin, whispering secrets she could barely comprehend. Every tree, every leaf, every shadow trembled as though anticipating the moment that had been centuries in the making. Rowan stood at the center of the clearing, his posture straight, unyielding, radiating a presence that made the earth itself respond. His eyes glowed silver, brighter than before, reflecting the moonlight in sharp, unnatural brilliance. The bond between them flared violently. Seraphina felt it in her chest, a pulse of heat and power so intense she had to clutch her arms to her body to keep from trembling. Around them, the black hollow pack had gathered reluctantly. Their whispers were gone, replaced by a tense silence, every wolf straining to understand the change they could feel but not name. Even the alpha who had mocked Rowan earlier stood at the edge of the clearing, teeth bared, heart racing, instinct screaming that this Omega was no longer anything they could challenge. Rowan's gaze swept over the pack. Calm. Controlled. Yet beneath that calm lay something old, something eternal, something that demanded obedience simply through its presence. Tonight, he said, voice low, steady, resonant enough to carry through the trees, you will see what it means to mock blood that carries centuries of power. You will see what it means to underestimate what you cannot understand. And you will remember it for the rest of your lives. The alpha stepped forward, attempting defiance, though every muscle betrayed the tension that gripped him. We will not be ruled by an Omega, he said, voice faltering, though he tried to sound strong. We will not bow to. Rowan raised a hand, just slightly. The air seemed to crack, like static before a storm. The ground beneath them vibrated faintly, felt even through Seraphina's feet. The alpha froze, unable to move, unable to breathe. The pack murmured, fear rising in their hearts as instinct screamed the truth. Rowan was no longer an Omega in the ordinary sense. With one deliberate motion, Rowan stepped forward. The moonlight caught every movement, highlighting the shift in his form. Muscles tensed, fangs glimmered faintly, but he did not strike. He did not roar. He simply moved, and the air bent around him as if acknowledging authority older than any law or lineage. The alpha fell to his knees, trembling. Other pack members staggered back, instinct overriding thought. They realized, finally, that their arrogance, their cruelty, their mockery had been a dangerous gamble. They had challenged a being far beyond their comprehension. Seraphina's chest heaved. She stepped closer to him, feeling the energy pulse through the bond connecting them. She could feel the depth of his power, the restraint, the ancient authority, the promise of protection. She had never seen anyone like this. She had never felt so safe, yet so aware of the sheer force contained in a single being. Rowan lowered his gaze to her, voice soft, intimate, meant for her alone. Stand with me, he whispered. This is not just about them. This is about the claim that has waited centuries. I cannot do this alone. She took his hand, and the bond flared again. Heat, fire, and moonlight wrapped around them, intertwining their strength. She felt the weight of his bloodline, the ancient call of the Lycan power, and the certainty that he was the one chosen by destiny. Then Rowan spoke, louder now, a command that shook the very trees. I am the Lycan King. I claim this pack. I claim what is mine. And I protect what is mine. A roar echoed through the clearing, not from Rowan, but from something far beyond the forest, a presence older than time, answering to him, recognizing him, acknowledging him. The wolves scattered instinctively, even those who had not witnessed his power before, instinct overriding knowledge. Rowan's form shimmered in the moonlight, strength coiling in every movement. Fangs bared, muscles tensed, his presence undeniable. Yet, despite it all, he did not strike a blow. The Alpha and Betas knew instinctively that any attack would be fatal. They bowed, not out of choice, but out of recognition of the power they could neither match nor resist. Seraphina's eyes widened. She had never imagined such authority, such dominance, and yet there was no malice in him. Only control. Only certainty. Only the protection of what was his. He turned to her then, and she saw the full depth of his silver-gray eyes, reflecting the moonlight, reflecting centuries, reflecting the unbroken line of the Lycan King. Do you see now? He asked softly. She nodded, voice trembling. I see. I understand. You are everything and more. Rowan smiled faintly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. And together, we are unstoppable. This bond, this blood, it cannot be broken. They will remember what they did. And the world will bow, not because I demand it, but because they recognize the truth of what I am. The Alpha lowered his head fully, fear and awe etched into every line of his body. The rest of the pack followed. There was no laughter, no mockery, no defiance. Only recognition. The moon glowed brighter, wrapping them in silver light. The bond between Rowan and Seraphina pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat of destiny itself. Far beyond the forest, in the unseen reaches where the ancient Lycan blood had slept for centuries, a surge of recognition answered him. Rowan's claim was complete. Seraphina felt warmth and power, protection and destiny coursing through her veins. She knew that she would never be afraid again. That Rowan, the man once called weak, was now her protector, her mate, her king. The clearing settled into quiet. Wolves watched, silent, humbled. Rowan and Seraphina stood together, the bond between them blazing like the sun reflected in silver moonlight. The world had shifted. The pack had learned. And the Lycan King had claimed what was his. Nothing would ever be the same again. Seraphina rested her head against him, feeling the power beneath his skin, the certainty in his presence, the promise of a future no one could ever threaten. Rowan's hand covered hers, and in that simple gesture, the centuries of waiting, of restraint, of ancient blood calling out, found fulfillment. The moon shone down on them, silent witness to the rise of a king, the Omega who had never been weak, and the woman who had stood beside him through everything. And in the heart of Black Hollow, for the first time in memory, there was peace.